And we're live. So, Darren, I wanted to welcome you to the DoorGrow show. So, I'm Jason Hull, in case you don't know, and I run DoorGrow. You can check us out at doorgrow.com. And I have Darren Hunter here. And Darren, if you haven't heard of him, is one of our pals from the Down Under in Australia, and he is one of the foremost experts on increasing property management fees in your business, increasing your rent roll without adding new doors, right? Everybody knows that you can add new doors, but this is another way, right? Making more money off of your existing contracts. And so I'll tell you a little bit about Darren. So Darren, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time out to show up here with me.
Thank you, and g'day, Jason from Down Under, and to all your viewers.
What time is it there right now?
Right now, it is 9:30 in the morning.
Oh, this is perfect. So you're just getting going, and I'm finishing my day here.
Spot. Yeah.
Cool. So Darren, I'm looking at your about page, and it says here, a consultant and trainer now for over 9 years. He's previously worked as a state network property manager with one of Australia's most respected and real estate brands, recruiting, training, implementing policies and procedures, managing 28 property managers and 18 regional offices. So you don't just do some consulting for property managers, you've been doing this stuff, doing property.
Correct. I've got 15 years frontline experience. I've been a property manager, a senior property manager. I've been a department manager. I've also been a property inspector, doing all inspections, what we call the ingoing, which is the first inspection, the outgoing when the tenant leaves, of course, the inspections during the tenancy. Used to do those full time, but also the several years as a state property manager where I managed 28 property managers spread over a third of Australia. So I had my nearest property manager was around about 25 miles away. My furthest was about 1,500 miles away. And so I had to learn how to manage these people effectively with the policies and procedures and recruitment, of course, and training. So that is my background, very, very solid in Australian property management.
Very cool. And you're not just an Australian expert. You've been over here to the States, it sounds like several times, consulting different NARPM groups and working with property managers here in the U.S. as well to help them increase their rent roll. So great. So Darren wrote a blog article recently, and we'll post the link here in the room. So we're going to talk about some of these items because I think this is really interesting. So this is the 7 wrong mindset reasons that stop you getting better fees. And so when somebody comes to you or you approach somebody and you're like, yeah, you could increase your fees, or it's mentioned to somebody, instantly they probably think there's a problem, right? They have reservations and concerns. And so what do you typically hear?
Let's take a step back. If I did a seminar and let's say I flew into Los Angeles and we have a big seminar called Grow Doors. Yeah. And we're going to give you 20 rent roll growth strategies that's going to help you grow your doors, and you're going to be able to increase your income and increase your profit automatically. Everybody knows what that's about. They understand it straight away. Right. There's no wrestle in their mind about that understanding that particular concept, and would probably pack the room. But as soon as I say that, hang on, that growing your doors is actually one way to increase your income and profit, and you can also increase your income and profit without increasing your door numbers by improving and increasing your fees. Well, for a lot of people, there's suddenly a bit of a problem with that. Right. And we have a mindset problem. And some of the things that come in as well, Darren, you're from Australia. You don't understand the United States. Or hang on, Darren, I know you've successfully taught this with offices in Texas and in New Mexico and Florida. But in my rent roll, our owners are too tight, or our owners come from such and such culture, or a lot of other reasons. And they're the actual mindset reasons of why that person cannot increase their fees. And so what I've realized is that things like saying, well, our owners are too tight, or our owners have been with us too long, or Darren, if we increase our fees with our current owners, they're all going to get and leave to go to the cheaper agent down the road. Right. Lots and lots of reasons, which is covered in this article. I do know that it never, ever works that way. And unfortunately, people are missing out on an extra 20,000, 40,000, 100,000, even $250,000 a year extra in fees, simply because these wrong mindsets stop them.
Yeah. So, and by wrong mindsets, you're talking about fears, uncertainties, just general unease in making this step to be open.
Yeah.
To charging more fees
So
or collecting fees.
Let's go back into that and talk about it. I used to have a fear of flying.
Okay.
That's really unusual because I'm on flights every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I'll be going to the NARPM Brokers Conference next month in April in Vegas. And I'll be taking an international flight from Brisbane, Australia, through to LA, straight through to Vegas and so forth. Then I'm going to go do some fee maximization work with an office in New Mexico. So I'm doing flights all the time. But I used to have a fear of flying. And when we're up, 40,000 feet and the turbulence starts to kick in, my heartbeat starts to increase and I start to get the shakes. So we're descending in the planes, just unstable as it's coming down towards the runway. My heartbeat is racing and I'm just very, very nervous. But you've got to look at this fear and think, what am I afraid of?
Right.
Because in Australia, we've never, ever, ever had a commercial airline crash, ever. That's neither Qantas, neither Virgin, which are the two main players here in Australia. So I've got to think, what am I actually afraid of? I'm afraid of the plane falling out of the sky, but in reality, it's never going to happen.
Right.
So my perceived fear is not actual reality.
Right.
And this is the same with fee maximization. We have these perceived fears, but in reality, it's not true. But the problem with a mindset is that it becomes your truth for you. And therefore, you can't see past it. And then that truth stops you by increasing your income and enjoying a better profit.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So our fears are always usually holding us back. I found that with my own fears or anything that I'm concerned about, when I actually take the risk to do it and step into that void, it feels like I'm walking off a cliff, right? It's scary. I take that risk, but then I'm there, and it's never, ever been as bad as my mind had made it out to be. Our imagination is just so good. It's so good at making
Correct.
it really scary.
Correct.
So
we really need to have the right mindset about what we're stepping into. And what I found, and I believe we've given a link to our viewers on this particular article, but the real reasons that do stop you increasing your fees. Now, if this is really talking for people that have the 50, 60, 70, 80 doors, 150 doors and so forth, you can do this. But what actually stops you improving your fees with your current clients? It's all about peace of mind. And let me just explain that for a second. I've got 2 rental properties here in the city I live in, which is called Adelaide, and that's like at the center bottom of Australia. And I was doing a fee maximization seminar in Sydney with a group of about 30 property managers who are coming into the room. 10 minutes before my session, I get an email from my property manager, and I call Maria, and she emails me saying, Darren, your shower is spurting water everywhere. We need to get a plumber in. I'm thinking, well, okay, you could have organized it, but all right. And I just put on here, please deal with it. But then when I put the phone down, I had 5 minutes to go to showtime. I felt something. You see, the alternate, if I've managed thousands of properties in my career, do you think I can manage my own rental properties? Yes. Do I want to? No, I cannot be bothered. I haven't got the time. I really cannot be bothered with that. And so I've given my stress and my issues for someone else to deal with. And you see, in that moment, I could have been managing my own rental properties, but and let me trying to get a plumber in 10 minutes with someone I don't know. The best thing I may have got is actually speaking to their message bank. And we still got a problem in crisis 5 hours later because I wasn't able to deal with it. So my point is, when I put my phone down saying, please deal with it, I felt a sense of peace. Is what a property manager is for, is taking my stress and my issues, and in return, I get peace of mind. And of course, the stress and issues become the problems of property managers and all the difficulties of property management. But my
Right.
point is this: if your owners have peace of mind, strong peace of mind, and they've had a problem solved for 1 or 2 years, and suddenly get an email or a letter saying, due to business expenses have increased, but also for the fact that we haven't revised our fee structure for 5 years, we've had to make some changes, and here's what they are. Bang, 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 bang. Please can you sign and return the attached agreement within 7 days? What are they going to do? Because most owners value their peace of mind, and they would rather pay a little bit more to maintain that peace of mind than pull their business and then go back into the land of stress and uncertainty to find someone else simply for cheaper fees, and they could actually be in a worse off situation. So we can only do it with owners that have peace of mind. Now that means as long as we're giving a reasonable level of service or better, not brilliant. I said reasonable. In other words, as long as all your owners
as long as
don't
it's
hate
not
you.
terrible, right? As long as, yeah.
And you'll know if you're getting a regular loss of doors because owners are unhappy with your service, that's not good, because it takes a lot to upset an owner. I've got one of my clients, he said, Darren, I've worked it out. To make my owners leave, if they're happy, to make them leave, I literally have to punch them in the face. Now, we're not going to do that, and we're not going to assault our clients. But the point is that they can put up with a lot before they go, all right, I'm going to go now and go find myself another agent. Most owners take a lot of beating and being upset to do that. Now, so also, if they've been with you less than 12 months, their peace of mind is not bedded down strong enough yet. The roots aren't in deep enough yet. If a broker has bought a rent roll in the last 12 months, then still leave those owners alone, because the peace of mind and they haven't been
they're
rooted
still in the
deep
uncertainty sort of state, and they're wondering how they're going to be
peace of mind
you're going to be dealing with them. And if you spring a rent increase, or I mean not a rent increase, but you spring a new fee or fee increase on them, they're going to be like, okay, you've confirmed my greatest fear, right? Yeah.
Correct. So they have to have a sense of peace of mind. Either they're not thinking about you, or they're thinking about you for positive reasons when they're informed that their fees have been revised. And so we can't go to new owners that have been with you less than 12 months. We can't go to owners that have been purchased in the last 12 months. And we can't go to owners that may be upset with you at the moment. Whether it's the property manager's fault or not, it's irrelevant. So, for example, you could have a tenant calls the property manager and says, my water heater is leaking water out at the base. And certainly from where I'm from here in Australia, if we get a property manager that can see that water is pouring out of the base, that water heater is cactus. And so we're going to have to go and find a new water heater, and it could be in Australia $2,000 to replace. Now, is that the fault of the property manager? No. Is that the fault of the tenant? No. It could be 12 years old. But the owner wasn't expecting suddenly to have to come up with $2,000, and now he's upset. So you just got to leave anyone that's upset alone until they're bedded down again. And the only other place where you don't increase fees with current owners is where their property might be coming vacant, or where you know it's coming vacant, or where it definitely is vacant at the moment. You don't touch the fees, because their peace of mind has been destabilized again, and they're stressed because likely they're covering the mortgage for that vacancy period. So they're very upset. So you do not increase your fees in
So as a general rule of
situation.
thumb, a great question they can just do is they can look through each of their properties in their portfolio, and they can say, is there anything that has shaken their peace of mind lately? Or do we have a good, stable relationship with them? Or is the relationship just kind of there? Like they've just been on board for a while and everything's been kind of placid. Now is a good time to mention a fee increase. Now, a question related to that, would you, when increasing rent or fees for tenants, one of my previous interviews, he said, this needs to be built into your process, and you should mention that this happens on a regular basis, and so that they're prepared for this. It's not like, hey, fee increase right now. So, but with owners, do you feel like it should be kind of prepared or in advance, and you should say this is coming in like 6 months, or would you just tell them, here you go, this is what's happening, and it's now? Or how would you recommend that?
Yeah, Jason, great question. I do not recommend, when it comes to increasing fees, to give a lot of notice.
That's great.
I really feel that perhaps 3, maybe 4 weeks at most notice. I don't believe in giving 1 week's notice. And certainly at the end of the day, with the agreements I work with, and certainly my clients in the USA, they've got to sign and agree to something. We can't just send a letter giving 30 days notice, your fees are going up, something has to be re-signed, unless you've got an agreement that allows for that. But generally, we just deal with getting management agreements re-signed. But if you give them, let's say one of the trainings that I give my people is that if you say to an owner 2 months in advance, just, Mr. Owner, be aware your fees may be revised in the next couple of months, you can expect a firefight. You can expect deep resistance to that. And you've already prepared the negative wall for that, and you've made your job a lot harder. Also in offices, I tell them, don't tell the real estate salespeople that your fees are going up, because your real estate salespeople will now say, oh, but your clients aren't going to pay more, and they'll never do that. And before you know it, that negative mindset will pull the whole project backwards to a possibility of it not going ahead at all, because now people believe it won't work. But so I believe just giving a letter in the post and just saying, this is what's happening. However, I need to clarify this further. You talked about how do we go through it? We get all of our owners onto a spreadsheet, and we divide our owners into 3 categories. The first category, the owners we don't touch. And we've already been through that list before. Owners that have been with us less than 12 months, owners that have been bought in a rent roll last 12 months, owners that have a property pending vacant, currently vacant at the moment, owners that are, not happy with us at the moment. And those owners are put on hold. We call that category 1. Category 2 is the owners with 1 or 2 properties, and they're going to get a letter letting them know to sign an agreement. But also category 3 is our owners that have multiple properties, ones of 3, 4, 5, because these owners we have to treat differently. Because whereas I'm saying you don't give your owners advance notice, you just give them the letter, multiple property owners need that little bit more grooming, a little bit more petting, because they feel that they are more important. They feel that they have more control and say over things. So therefore, it might be a phone call. It might be take them out to lunch. It might be a visit or something that's applicable in that relationship to let them know, hey, we've had to change our fees because of X, Y, Z. We haven't reviewed our fee structure for 5 years or whatever it is. And this is what we've had to do. And don't just give them the letter because they may be offended or insulted by that move.
Yeah, because it's very impersonal. So, yeah, and I would imagine a lot of property managers could do this digitally. Like, don't you think, could it be sent out as an email? Here's the digital signature, just sign this and that sort of thing. And for them, it's really quick.
So here's the go. Obviously, the letter must be structured right. And the letter really needs to have the first part of justification, just due to business running expenses, gas, electricity, insurances have gone up, and we haven't also reviewed our fees for 5 years and so forth. These are the changes that we've done. List, full clarification, clear, nothing gray. It's got to be very, very clear and transparent. Please, in the email is also an agreement. Can you please sign that? In America, all my clients are doing DocuSign. In Australia, everybody's doing it by snail mail. And we are now stepping into the age of document signatures. So I'm more experienced in, signing. And I've even got clients in Western Australia. I mean, these management agreements will give you nightmares. They're the most complex on the planet. And we're dealing with 12 and 15 fee increases. And you wouldn't believe this. Every fee by legislation has to be initialed off one by one by one by one by one. And it's very painful, but we still get success even in that environment. However, New Zealand, where we do it, we can just simply send a letter. Legislation there allows us to send a letter giving 30 days
and then
notice.
you just do it.
But my only advice to people in the USA is you always got to get a signed management agreement back for the client to agree to it before you can actually change any fees. Otherwise, the rules of contract law, you're only going to get yourself in trouble.
So, so one thing that I've noticed when I've increased fees, because as businesses grow, this is typically a very normal thing, not just in property management. And so in any industry, usually their fees go up as their value increases. And so what I've used as a tactic, and this may be part of what you do, but I find that a lot of my clients, they don't really care if my fees have gone up. But so what I usually do is I recommend or tell people to say, these are the things that we've done to add value to our service. And so if a property manager has added value, we added 24-hour phone reception, or we've added automated maintenance, or we've added, some sort of value. Those are some great selling points to convince them that we're benefiting you in a greater way, instead of only just mentioning like, our rent's gone up, and stuff like this. So I think that would be also a really cool idea for property managers to add that in, like to mention some value.
Add value certainly, if anything, helps with the confidence of the property manager. But here is what I've found, having done this so many times. You don't necessarily have to add new services or add value. You don't have to. Here is the secret in the sauce. This is how you do it. It's a two-part formula. Number one, you need to believe that you're worth it. So I did a fee maximization training with an office here in South Australia a couple of days ago, and we were talking about charging a fee for the final inspection. And they've never charged a fee for that final inspection where the tenant's moving out. We do the outgoing inspection, and then the bond is calculated, what you call the security deposit, we call the bond. And all that work associated, there is a lot of hours of work. And very quickly, the property manager could see, my goodness me, the amount of complications we have with this process. It takes hours of our work. It could end up in court with disputes. We could easily justify X dollars for this particular fee. So one, she could see that she believed she was worth it, and then she knew how to justify it. So if you can know that you're worth something in here, conviction, strong belief. Like, I know I'm good at teaching fee maximization, and I know that we get success every time, provided our process is followed. I know I can do it. That I believe. It's faith. So people get a little bit, hoo-ha about this belief thing. It's not wishful thinking. It's a conviction and a belief. And if I believe it, Jason, you've just believed what I've just said. And your viewers have just believed what I've just said, because I believe it too. Belief is transferable. But also on top of that, we've got to be able to justify that particular fee and why we're doing it. So here's another rule that's going to help you and help your viewers. And I've written a law. I've written 11 laws. Would you like me to get you a link to that article, Jason?
You can.
All right. I'll put that over shortly. Let me just see if I can find it, and we'll just whack it in so people can actually access it straight away.
This is on your.
Let's have a look here. 11
on DarrenHunter.com.
So on my website, if they go to DarrenHunter.com, if they go to our articles and knowledge library and boosting income and profitability, we've got about 20, 30 articles there. I'm actually thinking now, I may not have actually loaded this particular one.
What's it called? The 11
Here we go. Now, I've got 11 profit laws on fees. So I've got the link here. I'm just going to bring it over, and we're going to give it to your viewers. And let me just throw it in. Okay. So that's the 11 profit laws. Cool. That's part one. That will take you to part two. But here is a really important law to understand. And once we get it, we're going to have that penny drop. We're going to have that aha moment. And I just need to explain it. If we're providing a service and we're charging a fee, and let's say that fee was 3 apples because we can't talk dollars. We've got to, be careful about antitrust legislation and so forth. All right. But let me just say, actually, let me just come back a bit. Let me just say we're charging half an apple for that service. But let me say, all right, Mr. Owner, I'm no longer going to provide that service to you anymore. And we don't provide it. We don't charge our half an apple. And where that service is now being withdrawn, that owner, that could actually cost him 10 apples in money. Does that make sense? But if we say, well, look, Mr. Owner, it's going to cost you 10 apples if you don't have this service, but with us, we're only going to charge you 3 apples. 3 next to 10 is a bargain compared to what the alternate cost could be. Does that make sense?
Strategy is usually called price anchoring. You're bringing up the higher price, anchoring it to that, and you're saying normally it costs you this.
You're putting you're putting your fee in light of what the alternate
like a life coach, for example, would do it like this. They'd say, well, you could get into a divorce, which is going to cost you half of everything that you own and everything financially, or you can do coaching for like 50 grand, right? And maybe improve your marriage, right? So I've heard this sort of idea.
Yeah. And this works for all sorts of different places in property management. Most of the fees that we charge to owners can be put in light of the law of alternate costs. So for example, the owner could say, well, hang on, why are you charging me this fee for your leasing when I could go down the road and the other agent is going to charge me X? Look, I understand that, Mr. Owner, but with us, we do X, Y, Z, and that will then reduce your vacancy factor, and you could go with a cheaper agent, but it could cost you thousands in vacancy. It could result the property being vacant for 2 or 3 months and you're not getting any income because they're not doing X, Y, Z. With us, it's cost a little bit more here, but then it's going to reduce that amount of cost for vacancy. And so you've got to put things in light. Another analogy I'd like to give is we actually charge a fee here called an annual summary. And this is where owners each month get 12 monthly statements. And this is a year summary of the whole 12 monthly statements. And agents here don't have to give that annual summary of accounting to the owner. It's an added value. And so if we withdrew that and said, Mr. Owner, we're not going to give you this annual summary anymore, the owner, what's the alternate cost to the clients? They have to take their 12 individual monthly statements to their accountant. And by the way, accountants don't charge like property managers. I mean, I'm seeing property managers charge the most ridiculous hourly rates. Even the lawnmower man charges more per hour than a typical property manager. So, but the accountant might charge $165, $220 or $250 an hour for their services to put 12 monthly statements together. And it might be $400 or $500 worth in cost of their time to put that information together. Whereas your annual summary statement is saving on that cost, that the accountant doesn't need to do that. So then if your fee, to charging a fee for that in proportion to what the alternate cost would be, you got to make it then look like a bargain. And I can't unfortunately say, look, the dollar rates could be this or that or this or that, because someone's going to get upset with that. But you got to put the alternate cost, and that if the alternate cost is a lot higher, then make sure that your fee charge is in proportion to that so they can see it's an actual bargain. But if you don't put it in light of the alternate cost, it could be seen as expensive.
I love it. I love the idea. The principle is really cool. So, cool. So, Darren, in related to these 7 mindsets, these challenges that people have, I don't know if we've covered all of these or any of these, but you mentioned that owners need to make sure that they have the right mindset in order to do this. And that sounds like that's kind of the biggest puzzle piece. Once they are open to it, they can probably start figuring out some things. They could reach out to you and work with you, or they could start digging around and finding out what with other property managers. Maybe they go to the broker owner conference and ask around, hey, what sort of fees do you guys have that you tack on?
You got to be really careful with
not
that.
Dollar numbers, but what type of...
when it comes to this, Even at the start of any NARPM conference, there is going to be a script that's read that no one can be discussing fees. So you've got to be very careful with that. But, however,
revenue sources,
certainly
then maybe
you can contact me. I have called hundreds of offices across United States. Just last November, we called 500 offices in Texas and got their fees over the phone. I have amassed a library of owner fees. I've got 100 different tenant fees also that we can cherry pick from. I do encourage people to get in contact with me because I'm not a broker. And therefore, with antitrust concerns, if you deal with me individually, of course, all information is confidential. I'm not there to share your information with anyone else. We're not breaching any law by dealing with me. But if I was a broker and I had a rent roll in Texas, there could be some problems you getting advice from me, but we haven't got that. So that's net advantage of dealing with myself. And if I haven't got the information, I'll go and find it. And if I've got a client that really, really, really wants to work with me, I'm going to get my secret fee shopper on the phone and we're going to call 10 of your competitors and we can really have a look at see what's happening in your market. And then we can help you increase your fees accordingly based on your expenses and where you're at without colluding or trying to copy anyone else's fees. But Jason, perhaps did you want to go through that mindset list and throw a couple at me? And I'll be happy to answer.
Let's go through these just real quick. If you have the time, this would be really cool. So, and I love everything you've shared so far. I think it's really, really insightful and has opened my mind to some new ideas here. So number one, but I have too many money tight owners. Like my owners will just, they won't go for it. They won't tolerate a fee increase.
All right. Yeah. That's one of the biggest. And, you know, I hear this all the time. And the only differences I see is the accent. It's either an Australian accent or it's an American accent saying it. All right. But the point is that, okay, 85% of properties in the US are managed by owners. So, you know, I understand that. But at the end of the day, why aren't your owners managing the properties?
Because
why aren't they saving on the fees? Because you're not doing a free job. You're actually charging them some fees, which they are paying. Mm-hmm. So they're actually with you for a reason. Usually it's peace of mind. They don't want to be dealing with the hassles of property management. And we all agree that's what it would be. And at the end of the day, they've got peace of mind. Therefore, they want to maintain that peace of mind and they'll be happy to pay more. But a money tight owner is generally money tight for three key reasons, which doesn't actually make them a quality type client. And generally this client, they can be over demanding, they can be unreasonable, they take up lots of your time. They call up and say, why hasn't the tenant cut the lawn last week and all this stuff? And you think, where do these people get time to send me these 5-page love letter emails every day? Mm-hmm. These people, whatever the rent is, they want more. Whatever your fees are, well, they've already probably asked for less on your signed up management agreement at the start of the relationship. But also, more importantly, they put little to no money into the property. And in Australia, this is what we say. They generally have a crap property that just attracts a crap tenant. And so it's crappy business all around. Mm-hmm. So we also got to think, do we actually value these types of owners as well? But even so, with these particular type clients, they still want peace of mind. And so when we do a fee maximization campaign with 50, 100, 150 owners, then we do find there are some losses. And usually it's these real crappy type owners.
Right, it's the worst ones.
But in general, you'll find that they will actually pay and they will stay. They don't necessarily walk out the door. Only some do, particularly of this type owner. And when we've done an autopsy and when we've put all the dead bodies on the slab, and these are all the lost, you know, some of the lost properties through the process, there's not that many, then we find that 66% to 75% of the properties are, guess of what owner type? The C-class owners. And so we really got to think, do we actually value that type of business anyway? Because here's one of my famous sayings, is that C-class owners are like a packet of cigarettes and they'll take years off your life. So you've really got to be careful on when you really want to deal with these type of.
I have my own phrase.
And I hope your viewers agree.
I have my own phrase. I like to say, you can't afford to work with people that can't afford you.
Yeah.
It's too
Yeah,
costly in terms of time and everything else. You can't afford to work with people that can't afford you. So and I think it really
throw another mindset at me. Throw another one.
Yeah, you bet. So next you have our owners will go to the discount agency down the road. They're just going to go right to somebody else.
Okay, let's dispel let's do Mythbusters, like you see on TV. Let's do some myth busting.
Yeah.
Because when I'm talking with brokers and the whole, you don't want to hear an Australian doing an American accent. You don't want to hear that. But
you don't want to hear me try an Australian accent.
Good
day, mate.
Darren, G'day, mate. Crikey, what was that?
Yeah, right.
What they say is, Darren, if we increase our fees with our current owners, they'll go to the cheaper agent down the road.
Yeah.
And here's why they won't. Is because when they first came to you, they may have seen one or two other agencies down the road. And for whatever reason, they've come over with you. And guess what? They didn't come over with you because you had the cheapest fees. They came and decided to sign their management agreement and give you their rental property because of trust, because of relationship, because of confidence in your services, because they felt that you are the one that's going to give them the best peace of mind. So at that point, when they've signed that management agreement, there is a sense of stress drops off them. There's a sense of relief, like, oh, thank goodness we don't have to stress about this anymore. We're stressing about the tenant from hell, and we're stressing about our mortgage not being paid, and we don't have to have this stress anymore. And when the property manager has found them a new tenant, it's like, oh, thank goodness for that. And so what happens in their mind at this point is that even the other companies that they saw and didn't sign with, well, they've forgotten about who they are. And they go on with all the other problems that are going on with their life, because this problem now goes from foremind to back of mind.
Yeah.
And that's where we want problem to be, because now you are their peace of mind. And so now they've forgotten about your competitors. They are not looking at the newspaper and thinking, oh, my goodness me, this agent's going to do it for half management fees. We better ring them up now, Charlie, and let's go. They don't do that. Their radar is not focused on what other agents are doing. And so 1.5 or 2 years down the track, they get a letter in the post saying your fees have been revised. They're still not thinking about your competitors. They've got no idea. And the problem is that brokers and property managers are working in the market week in, week out, day in, day out. So they are fully exposed to all the cheap people in the market, but your clients are not. And at that point, they've got peace of mind. They want to get their peace of mind back. And it's more convenient for them to sign something or press a button and pay a little bit more to get quickly back to that place of peace of mind and where their problem is solved, and they get on with their life. And the issue is that they might grumble about these new fees, but guess what? In 2 or 3 months' time, they've completely forgotten about it, and it's a new normal in their life. And this is how we do it, because of peace of mind.
Yeah, I would imagine that. So what you're saying is the real issue is not that the owners are going to be concerned about the fees. The real issue is that the property manager is the one concerned about the other company's cheap fees.
Correct.
They're not really thinking
the owners aren't thinking about it.
As a business owner, you're thinking about your competition far more than your customers are.
Yeah. Here's another rule. This peace of mind is so strong, because I've got agents here that say, hey, Darren, let's do this great rent roll growth, grow doors campaign, and let's take out a big billboard on the highway, and it's going to cost us $3,000, and we're going to have the message, are you unhappy with your current property manager at the moment? And I say, don't worry about it. It's a waste of time, because owners in general, they have to take a lot of beating to actually want to get up and leave the rent roll. Rent rolls are very, very strong things. And so I see it like cows in a paddock, and your portfolio, your doors, well, they're your cows in your paddock. And guess what? The agency down the road, they've got the paddock next door, and they've got their cows. And there's a big fence in the middle, and cows aren't very good at jumping fences. And so this is the having our rent rolls, that even if I move into an area and I got a list of all your owners and I send them all a letter to state, hey, if you come over with me, I'll give you 20% less. Guess
right.
what? They
Big
won't.
discount.
They won't, because owners inherently are lazy and they are lethargic. And as long as they have a problem solved, they ain't going anywhere. As long as they've got peace of mind. It's only if they're really, really upset with service, or their phone calls not being returned, their emails not being returned, or something has occurred which has cost them a lot of money, now they're motivated to leave, only in that situation.
Yeah, that's why they hired them in the first place. Yeah. So
correct. Now, you've got a question from one of your viewers. Did you want to go through that?
Yeah, so can you give some examples of the types of fees? And we have, do you recommend offering additional value for the increase? So I brought up the value thing already. We discussed that. So, and you said it's not even necessary. You can do that. If you have value, then maybe bring it up, but it's not necessary.
As long as you've got peace of mind. You've got to have peace of mind with your owners before you ask for more. Look, you can go and add extra value, but to me, it's just unnecessary. You can still do it without it.
Right. They just need to be okay.
Yeah. So let's just go through some of these fees. I'll go through some owner fees, and then we'll go through some tenant fees.
What do you feel like are the basic fees that they should have? Obviously, the full management fee, and maybe the lease up fee initially.
Well, yeah, and usually it's expressed as a percentage of a month. Again, we're not going to get into numbers here, but as a percentage of a month. And I'll be surprised when, for example, I've done a fee analysis on businesses in San Antonio. I'm blown away at the management differences and variances from, certain percentages, of a month. It's just so varied. And I look at these and I think, why? Because it's a tenant. It's an owner, it's a house, tenant pays rent, tenant moves in. The services in general basically are the same. And what I believe is that the fees are set in accordance with what that office believes they are worth. And therefore that sense of value or self-belief goes up and down, and the fees are always in accordance with what they believe they are worth. So management fees are expressed generally as a percentage, but what you need to be careful is giving them as a fixed rate. Now, I'm not here to, I don't know your management agreement. If you're charging fixed rate, if fixed rates work for you, that's great. But you need to make sure that you've got easy flexibility to increase your rates if they're at fixed. Naturally, if they're expressed as a percentage and the rent goes up, your income goes up. Now, also leasing fees are expressed generally as a percentage of a month's rent, and they go up as well or down in accordance with rent levels, which is what I want. We do see some offices have, say, a lower management fee in general and a higher leasing fee. And we see some out there, they're high management fee, high leasing fee. And we see people out there with a low management fee, low leasing fee. We see people out there with a management fee and nothing else. I've got a client of mine in San Francisco, and he was only charging a management fee, a lower management fee. But the problem was he was really, really good. And I said, in the law of you get what you pay for, you are failing badly, because the owners see you as a quality agent, and then they see your cheap fees and they must be thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. It's like charging a brand new Mercedes at the cost of a Kia. It just doesn't make sense.
People will be like, what's wrong with this new Mercedes?
Correct.
Yeah.
So correct. And they think, what's wrong with this? So we actually then looked at that. We added a leasing fee. We added a lease renewal fee, and he had a real problem with it. And he said, Darren, I've never done this before. I don't think my owners. I said, okay, let's just work on belief. Let's work on why you're worth it. And then let's work on scripts to be able to justify those fees. And he really arm wrestled me across the Pacific on this particular issue. And in the end, I said, hey, look, I can't help you until you just go and give these new fees a try with new owners, because we want to go do it with these current owners too. So I said to him, I said, hey, I'm just going to leave you to it now. There's nothing more I can do, because your mindset is stopping.
Oh, are you still with me?
Here.
I'm going to pause the recording. Cool. We had a little hiccup. You still with us? Can you hear me okay, Darren? All right, so we're back. We had a little hiccup there. All right, so
Okay.
so cool.
So talking about leasing fees and also lease renewal fees. And really, if you are really focused on making sure that a tenant's lease is renewed and keeping them locked into a fixed term, which means if they break that or leave early, then of course there's rent that needs to be paid by the tenant, other costs and so forth. You're protecting your owners. And I just want to state that if I was renting a property, I went and bought a property in your town. And if you said to me, well, Darren, we don't worry about renewing leases, because tenants, just let them go on to a month-by-month lease, I will not want to sign my management with you, because that's your mindset that's going to cost me money, because now I am not protected should that tenant wish to leave during a quiet time, during a winter period or something
that
like
would be
that.
Dangerous.
And you say to owners, look, we charge a lease renewal fee. And he says, well, the other agent down the road doesn't charge. And yes, Mr. Owner, commonly when we get properties transferred from other agents, guess what we find? The tenants generally being left to go on to a month by month. Do you understand financially what can happen to you if the tenant breaks their lease in a month by month as opposed to a fixed term lease? And that we charge X. And so from that point of view, the law of alternate cost, if it's going to cost them 10 apples, if they've got a tenant on a month by month in lost rent, leasing fees that you can't get back, advertising, all those sorts of things, and it's only going to cost them 3 apples to renew that lease, well, those 3 apples is a bargain in comparison to the 10 apples. Now also, just before we move on, commonly I teach if your leasing fee is a certain fee, well, the lease renewal fee be half that. Generally, half of the actual leasing fee is quite acceptable. So I do see a lot of people where their leasing fee is X, but their lease renewal fee is so tiny, they obviously don't realize the value they're bringing to the owner. And I say, well, okay, justify your fee. And they go, well, Darren, we have to make a few phone calls to the owner, a few phone calls to the tenant, someone signs something, forget it. Owners don't care how long it takes you to do something, whether it's a few minutes or a few hours. You promote the benefit it is to the owner by keeping the tenant locked in and what the alternate cost will be if they go with an agent that doesn't actually focus on it or has little to no fee. So that's lease renewal. Move-in inspections also. At the end of the day, these things are very, very easily justified if you're doing video as well. If you're doing detailed photos or a written inspection or whatever it is, just show them examples of these things. Definitely with new owners as well, it's very, very easy to justify. Inspection or assessment fees. Now, depends on what state you are in. Some brokers don't want to call their walk-through inspection an inspection. They might want to call it an assessment, but you understand it's just a routine check of the property. Other of my clients, like in Arizona, they may be changing the air conditioning filters while they're at it. And so, charging inspection fees or assessment fees. Monthly admin fees. So this in Australia is very, very common, where a small amount of money is charged per property per month. And it, of course, it adds up to a nice fee at the end of that. And how do you justify that? Well, it's petty expenses. It's phone calls, it's postage, it's this, it's that. And we don't want to be charging month by month those actual costs, Mr. Owner. We don't want to be a lawyer that charges, such and such money this month, and then the costs blow up the next month, and it goes up to this, and it's all unpredictable month by month. We just charge X, same fee, month in, month out. Some months we win, some months we lose. Also, a maintenance fee is very common. So you're organizing maintenance on the owner's behalf, charging a percentage or a fixed rate. And these are really, really easily justified. The owner says, well, hang on, the other agent down the road doesn't charge maintenance fees. And yes, great question, Mr. Owner. But have you ever been to buy a property and you've gone to an inspection and you've stood on the other side of the road? Have you got out of your car and actually guessed that it was a rental property from the other side of the road? Because obviously it's run down, it hasn't been looked after, and that's with an agent that only does reactive maintenance. If something breaks down, the tenant gets on the phone, calls, someone send someone out to fix it, but they don't keep proactively on top of maintenance. With us, we make sure that your property is maintained year in, year out. So when it comes to sell, it's at its maximum condition, which means you get the maximum price for it. But if you go with a reactive agent that doesn't charge for it, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, and reactive maintenance costs are going to be far greater than proactive maintenance costs.
And of course, the reactive agent isn't going to charge for it because it's not part of their focus and it's not part of what they do. They just collect the rent. So this is, again, do you see what's happening here? Do you hear a sense of, do you actually see that I believe in what I'm saying?
Sure.
You hear the conviction coming through?
Yeah.
And you hear me able to justify it. So again, the two ingredients are getting better fees. If you believe you're worth it and then you know how to justify it, you will get it.
And then there's the third one. The third one is knowing what fees might be possible. And so if you need to know that, you reach out to Darren.
We've got lots and lots of fees. Okay, moving on. Other owner fees, account setup fee, court fees, marketing fees, outside of contracts. This is outside of normal duties. So here in Australia, we might get an owner ring up and say, Darren, we want you to send one of your property managers to go out to the property, and we're meeting a bank valuer or an insurance loss adjuster. And we want you to babysit the appointment for 1 or 2 hours, and yes, Mr. Smith, and the fee will be. We're happy to do it.
We would love to do that.
Here's how much it would cost. And I cannot go on until I give full credit to the man that taught me. And the answer is yes, Mr. Smith, and the fee will be. And that's Gene Bennett, Gene, the lean, mean fee machine from Florida, Orlando. He's a national trainer for RPM, a close, dear friend of mine. And he taught me that right back in 2005. So outside of normal duties fee. So account setup fee, we talked about the annual technology fee. There's some others. Now, that's just owner fees. Let's go to tenant fees. So, of course, your late rent fee is the most common. By the way, viewers, in Australia, we can charge 0 tenant fees across Australia. Australia is one of the few countries in the world where the tenant is a protected species. And
that's not in America. That's the opposite.
California is getting close. That's where you are, Jason. Yeah. But when it comes to the fees, and the thing is that the government here is crazy. That we've got this consumer protection culture as strong here as what the gun culture is as strong in America. Yeah. And they've just got this mindset that the tenant is some poor creature that cannot afford to buy a property and therefore cannot be nickeled and dimed with fees. But guess what? That same tenant goes down to the bank and they get charged bank fees and they get charged credit card fees. And it's like, you can see my point. I love America when it comes to tenant fees. And here we can only think, we can only wish. But anyway, some tenant fees. So your late rent fees usually charged as a percentage of the monthly rent. Mm-hmm. So the tenant's 3 days late, they get charged a percentage, and then it might be $5 or $10 a day every day it's late after that to make it more and more painful. And California, as far as I'm aware, is the only state where that fee is allowed, but no other tenant fees. But just cross the border, and it's a lot freer and easier to charge fees. Also, repairs fees for damage is another one. Early termination fee, so break lease fee, court attendance fee, move out inspection. How about a no-show fee if they don't show up to an appointment? So that's a trip charge. If a person has to drive out to a property, the tenant's not home, well, there's a fee for that too. Application fee. A lease admin fee. So I'm dealing with an office in New Mexico at the moment, and we're charging a lease admin fee where the tenant signs up the property, signs up their lease, and this particular agent drives out to the property, meets the tenant there, goes through the appliances, goes through the manuals, goes through the property with them, and inducts them properly at the property. And so they charge a fee for that. And we're only just installing that because they didn't believe they could get it before, but they now are successfully getting that one.
Nice.
A pet violation fee or a pet fee, and this can be charged per pet per month instead of a fee up front. There are some offices doing that. A lost item fee like remote controls or something like that. Non-return of keys, there's a fee for that. Eviction notice, so and a formal eviction notice is being served. We've got a fee for that one too. A risk mitigation fee. So this is interesting, and a good friend of mine in San Antonio, Texas, told me about this one. And this is where a credit score is done on a potential tenant at application stage on their credit. And if their credit score doesn't come up to a certain standard, it might be below. This is a conversation. Look, Mr. Tenant, look, we're happy to consider your application, but your credit score hasn't come up to our full requirements, and therefore we're going to have to charge you a risk mitigation fee of X.
Because it's riskier to take them on, and they know
it. Correct. There is extra risk that we are undertaking. Insufficient funds fee is another one. So, we've got a whole heap of others as well. And generally when we work with people, we currently see where their current fees are with owners and tenants. And we look for that, the ways that we can increase, what are some extra owner fees we might be able to, add an extra one, maybe two, increase a couple of owner fees. How about some extra tenant fees? And this is generally what we're looking for. Jason, the average profit margin in a real estate business or a rental portfolio is 20%. Now that's in Australia. That means all income minus expenses, it's about 20% left. And it's also the same in America as well, because NARPM did a national survey where it came up at around about 20%. So let's say, and a lot of the offices I work with, we're commonly seeing total income per property. That's all owner fees, all tenant fees. Mm-hmm. We're looking at around about, on average, around about, maybe $1,500 a year on average. That means, but that's not what they're earning, because they've got to pay salaries, they've got to pay insurance, they've got to pay rent, they've got to pay they've got to pay all of these expenses, and that takes up 80% of that income. So their profit on those might be, might be $300. That's all they're earning. And so if their profit margin is $300, to double their profit margin, we only have to find another $300 worth of fees. It's not that hard. But the traditional thinking, let's say they've got 200 properties, 200 doors, and their profit margin is 20%. Traditional thinking says, go find another 200 properties, double your workload, double your staff, double your headaches, right, to get the double profit margin. But I'm saying, no, you don't have to. Or in that case, you only have to find an extra 20%. Right. It could be $300. And I promise you, we would easily find that in most.
So if this is the amount of money you make per door, and your margin is only that's left over,
is only this at the top.
You just need this much more, and you're doubling your income.
Margin. Correct. Doubling your profit margin.
Right.
Let's just get that. Doubling your profit margin, which is the reason why you get out of bed in the morning, is for the profit. It's not to pay and to support the economy and support jobs growth. That's not the primary reason for getting out of bed. It's for profit. And profit is not a dirty word, America. You're allowed to earn a profit. And what we're seeing is a lot of these ma and pa businesses, they grow their 10, their 20, their 30, their 40, their 50 properties. They haven't got fees in mind. A lot of the points of difference out of the surveys we did, you know what some of their points of difference were? We make sure that we've got the cheapest fees in the area. That's why you should sign up with us. Well, that's a recipe for going broke. And what happens with these ma and pa businesses, they get up to their 80 properties, they're really stressed with all the workload, and they look and think, I cannot afford to put anyone else on. And that's where they come undone with their sins of the past, of not getting their fee structure right and knowing how to believe in what they're worth and then charge a decent fee and able to justify it. That's where they come undone, and they hit the wall and they just sell out really cheap to their competitors. I remember speaking to a crowd in Atlanta, Georgia, and there were 300 brokers in the room. And after talking like this for 3 hours At the end of my 3 hours, I was absolutely convinced that only 5% in the room actually understood what a profit margin was.
Yeah.
They're just doing it for whatever fees they charge. And
it's
they've
probably
just
because
got
they have
these
no
sick
idea what all
businesses.
their expenses really
Got
are.
no idea. Look, property management is hard enough. It's one of the toughest jobs out there. Did you know the same attributes, the same qualities that makes up a quality property manager, they're exactly the same qualities that make up a police officer. And that is the difficulty of the job. So why do you want to be cheap? It's hard enough. You're dealing with tenants and their homes. You're dealing with owners and their money. And boy, the clash of the titans just comes into play with all those values just clashing. And you're the guy in the middle to solve all the problems. And so you need to be charging quality income and quality fees for what you do, because at the end of the day, the job is hard enough and you're worth it.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. So Darren, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been fascinating info. I think you dropped several knowledge bombs that are super useful. And we have a couple questions here if you have a couple more minutes that we could go into just real quick here on the right.
Sure,
so one
away.
is how important is it to stay within a reasonable price range of your competitors, or does it matter? Well, of course it matters, is my take. You have to be reasonable.
There is a matter. Okay, here's another law. This is going to help you. Called the law of the main game. And this is how we explain it. There's two owners. They come to a barbecue. You know what a barbecue is, right? And they come along and they have a beer and they're talking to each other and they say, oh, you've got a property for rent? So have I. Oh, fancy that. Oh, who are you with? Well, I'm with XYZ Realty down the road. Oh, really? I'm with ABC Property. Oh, my goodness. And what are they charging you? Well, my guy, he charges X percent. Oh, really? Funny that. My guy, he charges Y percent. But guess what? They didn't talk about any other fees because they forgot or they just didn't know.
Yeah.
So this is the secret in the sauce, is that you need to make sure that your management fees generally are competitive, and what the rack rate or acceptable rack rate is for your general area, without colluding, of course, but it just means that you're not doubling your management fees. We're not doing that. You're just keeping it around about the market rates, because that's generally the fee that owners care about. But boy, it gets wishy-washy after that. With the leasing fees, in general, you can have a look, but quite frankly, I've seen massive variations in typical marketplaces like Dallas or Austin or San Antonio or other cities like Florida, where they're all over the place. And those people, simply, the person that gets that high fee, well, guess what? He's justified. The person that gets the low fee, guess what? They justified it and they got it too. But all the other stuff, what I've worked out, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because the focus is on the main game, which is the management fee. And if not, it might be the leasing fee. But other than that, the other stuff we call the add-ons really isn't any big deal when you know that you're worth it and you can justify it. And so we get a lot of agents that sign up owners and they make their extra $200 and $300 and $400 profit out of all the add-on stuff, plus also improving the fees that they charge the tenants. And the only thing that stops them is their mindset, and usually it's a wrong mindset.
Yeah, love it. So your main fee should be in the realm of reality, and then after that,
correct. Realm of reality, or called the law of the main game. Keep it generally competitive, and then start doing the work in the other stuff. That's generally what I find works. I have changed. I have gone increasing management fees above market rate, but there are some special points of difference value we need to put in there for sure. But other than that, generally that's the secret, and the secret in the sauce, or the formula that we like to use.
Cool. Another question is, does the PM get the fees or split it with the owner? So if you're collecting all these extra fees from the tenants on the tenant side, have you ever seen property managers give any of that to the owners?
Okay. So here is my feedback on that from what I have seen. And that where a is shared with the owner, let's say the property manager said to the owner, look, this is our fee. We charge it to the tenants. We share 50-50 with you. The owner goes, okay. And another agent then might go, well, Mr. Owner, we charge the tenant this fee and we keep it because of X, Y, Z, rah, 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 and we keep it 100%. And the owner goes, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Exactly.
So it comes down to if you believe you're worth it and you know how to justify it. So that's a very generalized statement without getting into the nitty-gritty of what these fees are. But again, if you know you're worth it and you justify it to the owner and he thinks that sounds like a reasonable explanation, generally the response is okay. You just want to be on the more profitable okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like this is probably a backdoor chicken exit for some owners that are nervous about increasing their fees. They're like, well, I'll just incentivize the owner to be okay with it because I will give them piece of it, but it's probably not necessary.
Here's another one. Here's another mindset I've seen too with a leasing fee. You might get a agent that says, well, Mr. Owner, we'll charge you such and such leasing fee for a 12-month lease, or charge such and such for a 2-year lease. I'm just saying the owner is just going to say, okay. Or you can say, Mr. Owner, we charge X leasing fee for signing up a new tenant and locking in a lease. They go, okay. So you just got to understand that. Just make sure that you're on the proper mindset when it comes to charging and you're not losing fees because of some perception that you have that now has become your truth. That because more profit is actually the other side of that mindset. And there are some mindsets which are true and real, like you're not going to go charge triple management fees. There are some reality checks with that one, but you've also got to make sure you're not having false mindsets that's costing you a lot of money.
Cool. Yeah, love it. So I want to go back to your article real quick. I love the end of it where you have the real reasons you cannot increase fees.
Yes.
These are the real reasons. So
they are the ones that having done it so many times.
So the real reasons you probably should not increase your fees is your service level is poor.
Service levels are poor. So we've gone through those already, and they're those peace of mind things.
Yeah.
Is that you've got to go with owners that have peace of mind. So it takes at least 12 months to establish a relationship before you have the right to put your hand out and say, hey, we'll
for a year.
Here's why. Yeah, a minimum of a year. But if the owner's still unsettled, then wait. This is done on an individual. And when we work with clients, I go through a spreadsheet, owner by owner by owner by owner.
Ask them about each one.
I don't do blanket bombing. It's a strategic, surgical process of going owner by owner into the 3 categories and then going with the property manager. Property manager says, well, hang on, this particular owner, such and such, and thank you for telling me that. Let's put this one hold.
Okay, so it's a surgery, not a pill.
It's surgery, and it's very strategic, and it is a delicate process.
Love it. So Darren, how can people get a hold of you?
Okay, so you can email me, darren@darrenhunter.com. And I'll be happy to, make a time and catch up and talk about your circumstance. But go onto my website, darrenhunter.com. And if you go to in the menu, if you look up fee and income maximization, you'll see a whole heap of pages there, about 6 pages that talk about what I do. There's an explainer video as well. But also in my articles knowledge library, you also have a number of articles that have taken me 10 years to write. But also, if you just go to the subscribe to our e-newsletter, 3 tabs down, you can subscribe to our newsletter and make sure that you're kept up to date with what we're after and what we're doing.
Fantastic. Darren, I appreciate you coming on. If anybody is interested in seeing more interviews like this on the DoorGrow show, high-level stuff for really awesome property managers, make sure to subscribe to our DoorGrow newsletter as well. And you can reach that by going to doorgrow.com/subscribe. I'll put the link here in Blab for those that are hanging out here with us or they watch it on here later. But make sure to subscribe. And Darren, we'd love to have you back, I'm sure, again sometime. And we'll be seeing you probably at NARPM.
And before you go, if anyone's going to be at the NARPM conference in Vegas in a few weeks, I like either a Diet Dr. Pepper's or a Jack and Coke.
There you go. All right. Cool. Darren, appreciate your time. Appreciate you hanging out with me. It's been fun. And we'll be talking again soon.
All righty. Thank you. It's been great.